Alright, so there's been quite a few people asking me this question. They say, I'm getting into breeding ball pythons. What is the #1 morph? What is the #1 gene that I should focus on in my breeding operation? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, when I first started in ball pythons, I was really focused mainly on one gene, and then I kind of drifted to other ones. And then the last couple of years, I'm like, all right, this is the one. And then later on, I realized, all right, that is actually not the best gene to work with. And the funny thing is, the more you learn all the genes, you get a handle on all the different morphs, all the pros and cons, you start changing your mind down the road. And in this video, I want to show you some of the runner-ups, which I think have a really good potential, what a lot of people, I'd say, focus on in the beginning, and pretty much how I narrowed it down to the #1 ball python morph. Alright, so I'm going to start over here on morphmarket.com, and I'm going to show you how I kind of researched trying to figure out which ball python morph is the #1, the best one out there. And I'm going to start with the normal, classic, wild type ball python. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me, they say, what is the #1 ball python that you sell mostly at the shows? Now, let me tell you, right after I set up shows on the very first day, I can almost guarantee the first thing that sells, the first snake, the second snake, and the third snake, they're all normals. A lot of people come up to the table and they're like, I just want a pet snake. I don't want to spend a lot of money. This is what I'm looking for. And I actually pulled up here on Morph Market the normal, and I sorted by the lowest price. And the lowest one is actually $15. That is a really cheap snake, but you have to also keep in mind that if you're buying them on Morph Market, there's also the $50 shipping on top of that. So you're talking probably at least, $65, $70 to get a normal off of Morph Market. And I'd say the funny thing is, actually, when I started first selling snakes at the reptile shows, I was kind of listening to some of the chatter on the internet and the forums, and I showed up at the show, and my very first show, and I was selling normals for $20. And let me tell you, I was selling them left and right. As a matter of fact, I think some of the other guys at the other tables were buying my normals for $20, turned around and marking them up to $50. Because I'd say most of the times a normal would sell anywhere from usually between $20 and $50 at the shows. I've actually seen them. Actually, if you sell an adult female normal ready to breed, you could probably get $150 or $200 for a snake like that. But I'd say if you're just selling hatchlings, normally they're between $20 and $80. I'd say normally at the show. Usually it's $20 and $50. I pretty much sell them all at $50. And the interesting thing is there's so many people at the shows now here in Colorado that usually the really cheap normals sell really fast. So even if there's a table next to me selling for $20, when his snakes are gone, they'll come over and buy my snakes for $50, because that's essentially what I did at the first show. I sold all my snakes, and then right on the heel of that, everybody started selling their normals for $50. It's interesting how the whole supply and demand kind of works. So if you're selling at the shows, you could probably get $50. You might make a little bit of money if you're actually selling your normals for $50. So the problem is you're really not making a lot of money. It's a good thing, but you're selling a lot of snakes, but you're not making any money. So I'd say it's one aspect of selling a snake. If you're breeding snakes, you really don't want to focus 100% on normals. It's good to have a few normals. I actually think it's good to have a whole variety of different levels of prices, all the way from the low end all the way to the high end. So if someone comes up to your table, no matter what they have in their pocket, they can buy a snake if they're looking for a snake. That's kind of my thought. But as far as looking for the one snake to really focus on, I actually came over here and looked at all the different morphs, and you can actually see over here on Morph Market, it has all these numbers indicate all the numbers of snakes for sale. And I was looking through all these numbers, and it looked like the #1 that had the most was the pastel. So you're thinking, all right, pastel, it's the #1 morph, right? And it's not necessarily the #1. As a matter of fact, I came over here, I was looking at pastels, and pastels, I'd say they're not much better than normals. It looks like you can pick one up for as low as $30. So that's, usually about $80. As a matter of fact, if you go to a show, I'd say most single gene snakes are usually in about the $80 to $120 range, something like that. So you can do pretty good. I would say if you have a line of pastel that's not really that bright, you may be getting $80. If you have something that's really stunning, like a real super bright line of pastel, maybe you can get, you know, $120, or I'd say maybe even $150 if you have a really impressive line of pastel. But the problem is you're still not going to make a lot of money, and it's, you know, here's one. This is pretty much the most expensive pastel that I've seen over here on Morph Market. They're selling for $85 plus $50 shipping. So you're looking at, you know, probably a maximum of $150, I'd say, for a single gene pastel if you're lucky at the shows. And it's kind of the same thing. I came over here and looked at the pinstripe. So this is kind of all your single gene stuff that sells really well. It's I'd say the pastel is a little bit lower than the pinstripe. You're moving up a little bit on the pinstripe. And the cool thing about the pinstripe is you can breed it through your collection, and 50% of the babies will come out with the pinstripe. The same with the pastel. So you can really crank them out really fast. And here, the pinstripes, you know, they go down to $50 is the lowest. That's pretty incredible. I can't even believe it. But normally I'd say pinstripes are about anywhere from $120 to $150 normally for just a hatchling pinstripe. It's kind of the same thing with lesser. Lesser is just a little bit of a step up. So the lesser is really popular. You mix two lessers together, you get a blue-eyed leucistic. And if you can actually do a whole clutch of blue-eyed leucistics, the white snakes with the blue eyes, those do pretty good. If you can actually breed a bell to a bell and get a whole clutch of blue-eyed leucistics, it'd be pretty awesome. And those would sell for, you could probably get $300 to $400 per snake. But the problem is it's a little bit harder of a sell to sell something that high end. There's a lot of people looking for the white snakes though. And here is kind of what I focused on early on. This is the bamboo. So if you think about normals, it's kind of like the bottom level, and you can step up to the pastels, then the pinstripes, and then the lesser's a little bit higher, and then the bamboo's kind of like on top of all of them. And when I first started in ball pythons, I thought bamboo is the gene that I'm going to focus on. And they do pretty well. You see, the cheapest bamboo is about $200. And if you look, it really depends on the line of bamboo too. Some of them are kind of muddied out and not really that expensive, and the more brighter the ones you get, like Bobby, that's always around my shoulder. He is a super bright line of bamboo, makes some really awesome babies. And if you actually look at, I pulled up pretty much the most expensive single gene bamboo. This is probably the most you can expect to get for your bamboo. You're looking at about $325 plus about $50 shipping. So you're looking at about $350, I'd say, is probably the top end that you can expect for a hatchling, single gene hatchling bamboo. So I'd say you're actually making some money if you breed your bamboos. As a matter of fact, if you breed your bamboos through your collection, half of them will come out bamboo, half of them will come out normals, which is pretty cool because you get a lot of people coming over for the really cheap snakes, and then you get a lot of people coming over for, especially if you have an impressive line of bamboo. And it's funny because I thought, all right, you know, I started with the low end stuff, the normals and the pinstripes and the pastels. I thought, this is cool, a lot of people want them. Then you really do the math and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not making any money. And then you kind of jump up, step up your game into the bamboos, and then from there you're actually making some money. But the problem with the bamboo is that you can really flood the market really quick with bamboos, and I would say it has the potential to really crash the market. So I know I'm always pushing bamboos. I sold a lot of bamboos. You know, in 3 or 4 years, if everyone turns around and breeds their bamboos, we could flood the market and bamboos could come down to 80 bucks. It's really supply and demand. So that is probably one of the problems with a codominant gene. So the other thing you can think about is getting into a recessive gene. And if you actually look at the pieds, I pulled up some pieds here sorted by the lowest price. The pieds essentially is a snake with these white splotches through it. And the cheapest one is $250 for a male or a female. You can see these pieds. The problem with pieds is, I would say for me, I've been really struggling with pieds because for some reason, I don't know if it's just my collection or my snake room or the pieds that I have here, I cannot get them to eat on a regular basis. And if you can't get the females to eat, then you can't get them to breed every year. And then that really cuts into your production. And you know, if you're selling pieds for $300 or $400 and you can't produce every year, you might as well, you know, breed something that you can breed every single year for $200, and then you're making the same money because, you know, you can produce every year instead of every other year, or in my case, every 3 or 4 years with my pieds. Some of my pieds I still have, they're like 3 or 4 years old and they still won't breed, which is probably the biggest frustration. So really, I pretty much narrowed it down from a codominant all the way to a recessive. I'm not really sold on this. And then here, I would think this, in my opinion, I'd say the #1 morph, kind of going through all this from beginning to end, is, hands down, is the clown. And I would say the clown it's funny because when I started in ball pythons, I didn't really know what I was doing, and everyone's going crazy over the clowns. I'm like, I look at the clown over here, and I'm like, well, that is kind of an interesting pattern. And then I come back and look at the pied, and I'm like, the pied is so much more dramatic. Why would you want to get into the clowns? And let me tell you, the clown is kind of impressive by itself, but it really excels when you mix it with other combos. I would say probably the demand for clowns is on par with pieds. Clowns and pieds, I would say, are pretty much head-to-head as far as the most popular snake. And the thing with my clowns, every single clown I have in my collection eats every single time. They all eat like a pig. As a matter of fact, I had a female that laid eggs last year. A week after she laid eggs, she went back on food and she ate every single time the whole entire year. And after that, and I started looking at my clowns and my pieds. I'm like, I'm getting rid of these pieds. I'm getting into the clowns. As a matter of fact, I kind of switched my pied program to where now I'm just using the het pieds instead of the visuals for the females, and just using a visual male because you don't really need the weight on the male, you need the weight on the females. And I'm hoping I'll actually do a little bit better on my pied. But I would say, as far as everything I've seen, clowns are the bomb. It is the #1 snake. And actually, if you take a look over here, I actually sorted, I was actually scrolling through here in the clowns, and the funny thing is, if you look at the very first page, the low end is $150, but the interesting thing about clowns is that is for a male. If you start looking through all these low end clowns, every single one is a male all the way on the first page, unlike the pieds. That's pretty funny. And you come over here to the second page, and here is actually one in Canada, which is more expensive to ship across the border. But you take a look at this one. This is the cheapest female, $275. And if you actually open that one up, it's also $50 shipping on top of it. So now you're talking the cheapest clown female, you're talking at least $300 to $350 for the females, which is kind of interesting. And then if you want to jump into, I actually found this over on Morph Market here, they actually have an adult female clown. It has a picture on some eggs. If you want to jump into the project, get a pastel clown female ready to breed, you are going to pay some serious money for clowns. This girl is $2,000 just for a clown. As a matter of fact, I thought at one point it'd be kind of interesting just to get all the female clowns, fill my whole racks with just female clowns, feed them out for a few years, and then just turn around and flip them. You could buy them probably for, you know, $300 or $400, and then a few years later sell them for like $2,000 a pop, which would be pretty incredible. Of course, you're not really breeding at that point, you're just growing them up and selling them. I'm not sure if that would actually make more money doing it that way, or you probably make more if you actually bred them. But I thought it'd be interesting to actually just grow them up and sell them. That would be kind of interesting. So what I really wanted to do over here is I wanted to show you some of the potential of the clowns. When you're talking about different morphs, one of the big things you really have to look at is, first of all, how much money can I make if I actually breed them and sell them? Number two, will they actually eat? Can I actually breed these crazy snakes? And the third thing is how well does it mix with other combos. And I'd say hands down the clown is the winner of all the jeans when you start mixing it with other combos. And the other thing is the clowns are really holding their price really strong after all these years. And if you look at, if you sort by the highest price, they're as much as $10,000 for some of these snakes. And if you just scroll down and down and down, even down, you know, towards the bottom of the page, they're still at $6,000. Then they hold their price really well in some of these combos. So I just wanted to show you some of the amazing combos just real quick. We'll scroll through these. This is the Pastel Enchi Fire Clown. That is like no other snake I've seen. And it's a pretty impressive combo. And the funny thing with clowns is they always have these crazy patterns. Sometimes you can have two that look almost completely different with the same genes. And I think it's, you know, different lines of different genes mixed differently with the clown. And it's always, seems like it's always really impressive and really unique. And the other thing is they have a lot of really unique head stamps. If you're into head stamps, let me tell you, the different patterns on the heads of the clowns, the clowns have some really crazy head patterns on them. Every single clown is completely different. And this one is $3,500 still for sale, and it's a male. So you're talking about, you know, really holding the price really good. Here is a Banana Clown Leopard Enchi. This thing is crazy. As a matter of fact, I just bought a snake that looks almost exactly like this. The top is reduced into little spots. And this one is actually $3,500. There's some big money in clowns. Here's another one, the Bee Clown Het Axanthic. This is essentially just a spider clown. Take a look at the price on this one, $2,500. And we just keep going through these, that's pretty amazing. This is the Enchi Pastel Banana. Seems like the banana and the Enchi really go well with the clown. This is, it's possible yellow belly. You can't really tell the yellow belly in this particular combo. This one's actually $2,300. It's pretty crazy. And then the interesting thing about the clowns, you start mixing in other genes like the GHI and you get a totally different effect in the clown. It's not like, you know, you're mixing and you kind of get all variations of a theme. Sometimes you can get some really interesting combos like this particular snake, pretty much unlike any other clown that I've seen. And people keep mixing in new genes and making these incredible combos. This one is crazy. The GHI Fire Clown. This one's selling for $2,300. These are kind of the high-end snakes. Here's another clown. It doesn't even look the same as the other clowns. It's pretty amazing. The intense, awesome patterns and the variations when you start mixing in with the clown. This is the Pastel Leopard Clown. The leopard works really well with the clown. It's pretty amazing. Here's another one. This is the Bamboo Spider Clown. Kind of an unusual, unexpected mix, mixing the bamboo and the spider together on the clown. That is it's a really interesting snake. I don't actually think it's a black-eyed leucistic. I just think it's a really kind of a wiped out pattern of a snake with that specific combo. Here is a lesser spot nose clown. When you think of spot nose, you always think of clown because it works really well. You add the lesser in, and that is a really impressive snake. And it just goes on and on. Here's another one that looks completely different than the other ones. This is the Super Fly, which is that is a super pastel fire clown, which is really awesome. And let's see, you take a look at this one. This is completely different too. This is the Leopard Lemon Blast Clown. So this is the pastel pinstripe and the leopard in it. And the interesting thing on this one is it really doesn't have any head stamp on it, which is really unusual for a clown. Take a look at this one. This is the Butter Enchi Blade Clown, and the blade's kind of interesting. It's kind of like Enchi that goes, it's almost like a line of Enchi that came from a clown that you can actually move over into a separate gene by itself. At first I thought, you know, the Blade Clown is just a reduced line of clown. It's kind of, I'd say there's some debate whether you can actually separate the blade from the clown or if it's actually a separate Enchi line, which is kind of an interesting side topic there. There's some debate on that one. This one is pretty incredible. This is another Enchi Banana Clown, and I actually showed a few Enchi Banana Clowns, and every single one looks a little bit different. It's sometimes they're really intense, and sometimes they're not that intense. This is the Orange Dream Enchi. Vanilla Clown looks completely different. This one actually has a little bit of the black pixelation, which is kind of unusual, and kind of the wiped out sides. And here is another one. This is the Super Enchi Pastel Ghost Clown. Everything seems to mix really well with clown. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And Nick Verga asks, can a het lavender albino have markers? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, the only one that I really know that has markers is the pied. And when we're talking about markers, what we're talking about is some indication that a snake has one copy of a recessive gene. And pretty much by the definition of recessive is if you have one copy of the gene that doesn't have any visual effect at all. As a matter of fact, if you had some visual effect on one copy of the gene, we would actually call it codominant, because two copies would be the super, which looks usually completely different than the single gene animal. And I would say that the pied is kind of unusual, because with just the one copy of the gene, you can actually see usually just belly tracks along the belly, and only if you have a wild type classic ball python. You really can't see it if you mix other genes in the mix. You can only see it on the normal ball pythons. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.